So today we're going to laser engrave over 50 different materials, including wood, metal, plastic, stone, fabric, and a couple of others. I'm going to start off by showing you all of the examples, and then we'll talk about each one. So I should probably tell you, there's a number of materials that aren't safe to use in a laser cutter, things like vinyl. So I'll include a link to all of those materials in the description below. I'll also include a link to all the speed and power settings that I'm using in case you want to try some of these materials out for yourself. And finally, if you don't yet own a laser but you're thinking about buying a Glowforge, I'll include my referral link, which could save you some money while also helping to support my channel. So I think I'm going to start by showing you some of Glowforge's proof grade plywood. So it comes pre-finished and it's designed to work perfectly with the Glowforge. A QR code affixed to the front of the plywood prompts the Glowforge to pre-fill in the perfect settings for that material. You'll also find that the Glowforge software is really easy to use. And when it's ready, just hit the button. So proof grade materials include a protective masking that prevent burn marks from appearing on the surface of the wood. So after it's finished printing, you're going to want to peel off that mask to reveal a crisp engraving. So most of what I see being used in laser cutters is Baltic birch plywood. Baltic birch usually comes in 5x5 sheets and can be picked up in most local lumber yards, but you could also buy it online. So unlike proof grade plywood, Baltic birch doesn't come with any kind of protective masking. So you can apply protective masking to it, and I use this stuff all the time, or since we're just engraving wood, you can just sand it, spray it, and it looks fine. Now you don't need to stick with plywood, solid wood engraves well too. However, if your material is thicker than 1/4 inch, you might need to use a different tool to cut it. So for these samples, I just used my table saw. And because these aren't proof grade materials, you'll need to manually set the speed, power, and LPI settings. You can use my reference as a guide and experiment from there. I tend to do a lot of small test engraves to help me dial in the perfect settings for each material. So most wood and paper products engrave pretty well, so don't be afraid to experiment. But with that said, it might not be a bad idea to have a fire blanket and a fire extinguisher handy for just in case. Okay, so let's transition now into metals. A CO2 laser like the Glowforge can't cut into metal. You can try using a cutting wheel, however you'll get a much better result if you use a service like Send Cut Send. They're able to cut metal using this crazy high-powered fiber laser with googly eyes. I bought all of my brushed stainless steel, mirrored stainless steel, copper, brass, and titanium samples from them. They're really inexpensive and usually get your parts in a couple of days. I'll put a link to their website in the description below. Now you can't engrave directly onto bare metal using a Glowforge, although you can permanently etch your designs using the Surmark marking spray. It's really simple. You spray it on, you let it dry, you let the Glowforge do its thing, and then you wash it off. Although I will warn you, this stuff is expensive, but it does go a long way. I decided to take a few of the stainless steel samples to a chrome and powder coating shop in Asbury Park, New Jersey. Both powdered coating samples look really good. We're basically just using the Glowforge to burn off the powder coating to reveal the stainless steel underneath. One of the most popular metals to use with the Glowforge is anodized aluminum. You can easily cut aluminum using a carbide tip blade in your table saw. Although if you're using a saw stop, remember to disable the brake to prevent a false trigger. So let's take a look at plastics. We're going to start with cast acrylic, the most common plastic used in laser cutters. It comes in many different colors, it engraves nicely, and it's got a beautiful flame-licked edge when cut. Unlike wood, cast acrylic leaves a lighter impression when it's engraved. Anybody who does a lot of laser engraving is probably already familiar with Rowmark. Rowmark is a company that makes a lot of interesting products, mostly related to the sign industry. This sample right here is from their Flexicolor product line. It's a double-sided acrylic, and basically what you do is you engrave this first layer off, exposing the second layer underneath. It's ideal for making things like name tags. Although my new favorite plastic right now is delrin. It has high wear resistance and it's super strong. It's often used as a replacement for metal. For this next material, my friend Brett Ratner, a 3D printing expert, showed me that you can engrave directly onto PLA or PETG. It's a great trick if you'd like to engrave high-resolution graphics onto your 3D models. Somewhat related, I've been working a lot with PETG this week, making these 3D printed face shields. I've got PETG filament in my 3D printer and PETG sheets in the laser cutter. Next up, we're going to engrave different types of stone and masonry. We're going to start with Corian, which is actually a mixture of stone and plastic. They usually use it for things like countertops. Corian cuts beautifully and engraves equally well. It's also a great material to paint fill. The next few stone samples were cut using an inexpensive wet saw. Just make sure you do this outside because it can get really messy. So a number of crafters in the Glowforge community are engraving onto ceramic tile. Some of them are using the Surmark product design specifically to work with ceramic and glass, while others are getting more creative and just using things like Sharpies. So next up is my favorite example in this whole collection, and that is agate rock. Although we had to use a really expensive machine to get it cut, let's go check that out. So we're in the STEM department at the College of New Jersey, and here we have a water jet cutter. It's kind of like a laser cutter, but instead of a laser, it uses a high pressure water stream with like an abrasive substance in there to cut through tile or anything else. And so we're going to use it to cut out our agate rock. So we're all finished. The agate here is perfect, literally perfect edges. I mean, they look amazing. All right, so moving on. Did you know you could laser engrave fabric? Although you have to play with the settings a bit to make sure you're leaving a mark without burning all the way through it. Leather also cuts and engraves well. Although generally speaking, most leather workers suggest engraving veg tan leather over chrome tan leather. What's the difference? Veg tan leather is stiff. It's tanned using natural materials like twigs and bark. It's a much higher quality leather. Chrome tan leather is more common. It's generally pliable, but it's processed using harsh chemicals to speed up the tanning process. However, an eco-friendly alternative to leather is cork fabric. Cork fabric comes in a variety of styles, is durable, and it's extremely easy to work with. It's definitely my new favorite fabric. Canvas is interesting to experiment with too. It engraves well, and you can paint on it. Although Evo foam and silicone rubber are way more versatile. And yes, you can even engrave into bone. Well, that about wraps it up. If you have any questions, comments, or anything you want to share, please let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one.